They say the brightest light in the other world isn't the sun, but the moment a Seelie turns their eyes toward you. A glance so gentle it feels like mercy, yet so piercing it feels like destiny. Those who have felt it swear that for an instant the world holds its breath. For centuries, people have been fed a softened version of their story, the glitter-coated fairy tale where fairies are tiny, winged, harmless things. But the truth that lived in the mouths of the old Celtic storytellers was never that sweet. The truth was older, heavier, and carved into the bones of the natural world itself. Imagine a land before borders, before cities, before the hum of electricity drowned out the sound of the wind. A world where humans walked softly, not out of politeness but fear. Because they believed, no, they knew, that another world overlapped this one. A world older, brighter, and far more dangerous. And at the heart of that world lived the Seelie Court. Their name was spoken with respect, with caution, with a strange mix of longing and dread. They were not angels, nor demons, nor spirits in the simple sense. They were nature's elegance given consciousness, beauty woven with consequence. People described them as radiant, tall figures with movements too smooth to be human. Their skin glowed faintly like sunlight through leaves, their presence felt like the warmth that rises just before dawn. They were breathtaking, hypnotic, and deeply, deeply unsettling. The Seelie were not good. That part was a human misunderstanding. They were orderly, bound to law, bound to balance, bound to a sense of justice older than civilizations. To them, beauty and danger were inseparable. Every smile hid a bargain. Every gift hid a test. Every glance held meaning. The stories that survived were not bedtime tales. They were warnings. Whispered to children so they wouldn't wander too close to certain hills at dusk. Told to adults so they wouldn't cut sacred trees without leaving an offering. Not because the Seelie would kill you, that would be easy, but because they might take interest in you. Travelers swore the world shifted just before an encounter. A breeze that wasn't there a moment before. The smell of wildflowers blooming where none grew. A soft laugh in the distance, like chimes stirred by invisible hands. Some felt a warmth brush the back of their neck, others felt a sudden quiet as if the forest were waiting. And then they appeared. Not always fully. Sometimes only as lights hovering between branches. Sometimes as soft footsteps circling unseen. But occasionally, on rare and unforgettable nights, they manifested in radiant form, perfection sculpted from moonlit mist and living gold. It is said no mortal ever forgets their first sight of the Seelie. But if the radiance drew you closer, the truth pushed you back. The Seelie Court does nothing without purpose. They watch. They judge. They interfere only when balance demands it. The sweetness you think you know was a later invention. A human attempt to pacify something they never understood. Parents turned them into gentle storybook creatures because the real versions were too complicated to explain and too terrifying to dismiss. Over centuries, the wild, ancient brilliance of the Seelie was replaced with glitter, wings, and sugar-coated magic. But beneath that glitter lies something older, something the stories never fully erased. One tale speaks of a farmer walking home across the moors at sunset. A golden-haired figure sat beneath a hawthorn tree, weeping softly. Her voice was like wind chimes, her presence warm and sorrowful. She begged him for shelter. Being kind, he offered it. By dawn, his home had transformed. His crops flourished overnight. His animals multiplied. His wealth doubled. It seemed like a miraculous blessing. But the next evening, the court arrived. Because to the Seelie, a gift is never free. A kindness is never small. And hospitality is an agreement. He offered shelter. She accepted. And by their law, he belonged to her world now. He vanished without struggle, without cry, as if he simply walked into the night and dissolved into its golden light. To this day, locals avoid that hill on Midsummer's Eve, because sometimes faint lights flicker inside his abandoned home, dancing, singing, laughing. As if the Seelie Court still visits what they claimed. The ancient world did not mistake the Seelie for harmless beings. They understood their duality. Gentle but ruthless. Beautiful but perilous. Orderly but alien. And nothing demonstrated this duality more clearly than their eternal mirror, the Unseelie Court. Humans simplified it as good versus evil, but that was never the truth. The Seelie were not light, and the Unseelie were not darkness. They were complementary forces, guardians of different aspects of nature. Day and night, growth and decay, grace and chaos, balance and motion. The Seelie kept the peace with elegance. The Unseelie kept it with force. But both obeyed laws older than the moon, older than the stones themselves. The Seelie Court was ruled by beings of breathtaking composure. Some said their queen carried summer in her veins, warmth radiating from her like dawn breaking over frost. Others said she held the power to bless with a glance, or destroy with silence. Her court was a festival of light, fae with wings like stained glass, bodies woven from sunlight, faces too perfect to be comfortable. They enforced justice with rituals, not violence. They listened, assessed, weighed choices with a precision humans could never match. To them, a broken promise wasn't a mistake, it was a fracture in the fabric of the universe. This is why humans were taught: never thank a fairy, never promise a fairy, never accept food from a fairy, and never join their dance. A thank you implies a debt. A promise binds your soul. Food captures your spirit. A dance rewrites your destiny. But the Seelie were not cruel. They admired integrity, rewarded kindness, cherished beauty in nature and truth. They were protectors of the land, its flowers, rivers, trees, and hidden heartbeat. The lesson woven through their myths was simple: respect the world and the world respects you. Still, their justice was never warm. It was precise, poetic, inevitable. If you stole from nature, they stole something from you. If you lied, your shadow might detach and follow you until reparations were made. If you harmed the innocent, your voice might vanish for a season. Not out of malice but balance. One tale describes a thief who cut a sacred branch from a hawthorn tree. That night, he dreamed of golden-winged figures standing around his bed, silent, watching. When he awoke, he found his hands covered in blossoms that would not come off, blossoms that grew wherever he touched. He could no longer steal. He could barely hold anything at all. By spring, he returned to the tree, planted offerings, apologized aloud. And only then did the blossoms release him, scattering into the wind like tiny glowing stars. The Seelie Court did not punish blindly. They taught. Their realm itself reflected these values. The halls of the Seelie were said to be woven from light, vines glowing blue and gold, floors like polished crystal, arches that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Music echoed eternally, not from instruments, but from the very air, like the world itself was singing. Visitors described the sensation not as fear, but awe. An overwhelming sense that you were standing before something older than time, yet endlessly new. A place where beauty lived, breathed, ruled. But beauty in their world was responsibility. And this is where humans misunderstood them the most. The Seelie Court didn't bless or curse randomly. They studied intent. They examined hearts. They saw the intentions behind actions, not just the actions themselves. A thief who repented might be forgiven. A liar who lied to protect someone might be spared. A kind person who acted selfishly just once might be tested. They were the original watchers of moral nuance. But the danger came when humans misread their grace as mercy. A Seelie smile is not always approval. A Seelie gift is not always praise. A Seelie warning is not always threat. The court works through subtlety, symbols, patterns, hints. To them, communication is an art form, not a transaction. And humans, with their impatience and straightforward thinking, often missed the signs. This is how stories of disappearances began. Those who vanished were not always punished. Some were taken because they were curious, bold, reckless, or simply chosen. Some were said to have danced into the otherworld voluntarily, mesmerized by music so beautiful it dissolved the memory of every mortal sorrow. Others crossed by accident, stepping through the wrong ring of mushrooms or following a light that wasn't a lantern. But the most haunting stories involve those who were invited, those whom the Seelie Court found interesting. The old lore is clear: the Seelie Court watches. They observe. They notice the unusual, the dreamers, the poets, the people who feel the world more deeply than others. For better or worse, the Seelie do not ignore hearts that burn brightly. Even now, some say the court mirrors our world, reacting to how we treat nature, how we break promises, how we ignore beauty. They whisper that the Seelie watch from the edges of forests, from abandoned fields where wildflowers reclaim the earth, from places where humans no longer look. If true, the Seelie Court is not gone. It is waiting, silent, studying, choosing. And perhaps the greatest truth buried under centuries of glitter and softening is this: the Seelie Court was never meant to be adored. It was meant to be respected, feared, understood. Like sunlight, Gentle when you honor it, deadly when you underestimate it. This is the real beginning of their story. Not the sugar-coated versions. Not the glittering child-safe wings. But the truth that lived in the shadows of ancient hills and the memories of people who knew how thin the veil could become. And this truth leads us directly into their greatest secret. The divide between the Seelie and Unseelie, not the way modern tales tell it, but the way the old world understood it. The deeper we go, the more their world begins to rearrange itself around us. And the next step takes us straight into the heart of that divide. They had always believed the Seelie were the light fairies, kind and protective, the counterparts to the Unseelie, the dark ones. But as they stepped deeper into the stories, it became clear that the Seelie were not what anyone thought. Their morality was not human. Their justice was absolute, alien and precise. They were not bound by simple notions of good and evil, only by a balance that stretched across centuries and intertwined with nature itself. Legends spoke of their hierarchy, a complex tapestry of lords, ladies, and hidden nobles whose power was as subtle as it was immense. Each member of the court had a role, a responsibility, and a reputation that echoed across the mortal world without ever touching it directly. The queen, radiant and near divine, embodied the pinnacle of their order, an arbiter of beauty, law, and consequence. To meet her gaze was to feel the weight of centuries, to know instantly that your every action, thought, and intention was being measured. It was terrifying in its precision and mesmerizing in its grace. The lower members of the court moved in fluid synchrony, their wings refracting light into patterns that seemed almost mathematical. To the human eye, it was hypnotic, breathtaking, and slightly maddening. But to step closer was to risk becoming part of the Seelie's calculations, an unwitting participant in a system far beyond comprehension. Each interaction with a human, each observed behavior, was noted and weighted. A small act of kindness could be rewarded with blessings that lasted a lifetime. A single careless word, a lie, or disrespect could ripple into consequences that humans could neither predict nor escape. And yet, the stories that reached ordinary people rarely reflected this depth. Fairy tales turned these creatures into helpers, wish-granteurs, and whimsical sprites. The true Seelie were far more complex. They operated in cycles, with rituals and oaths that humans could not fully understand. A promise to a Seelie was binding, literal in ways mortals rarely imagined. A broken vow could twist reality itself around a person, teaching lessons with an unyielding patience and cruelty that only the long-lived Seelie could maintain. There was the tale of a young poet who, wandering along the edges of an ancient forest, heard the music of the Seelie before he saw them. The melody was not pleasant in a simple sense. It was layered, shifting, almost alive, pulling at memories he had never consciously experienced, conjuring emotions he had never fully named. He followed the sound until he found a circle of glowing mushrooms, perfectly round, each emitting its own soft light. To step into the circle was to enter the court's gaze fully. He did. And for a moment he felt as if his entire life was being read, laid bare like a manuscript. Then the figure of a lady appeared, her hair flowing like molten gold and her wings shimmering in fractal patterns of light. She spoke without words, communicating with intent rather than language. The poet understood that she measured him not only as a human, but as a reflection of the world around him. His thoughts, actions, and emotions were a microcosm of the balance the Seelie upheld. She nodded once, approvingly or perhaps merely acknowledging him, and then vanished. The poet left the forest forever changed, with words and visions that could not be contained by ordinary poetry. To mortals he became a legend, but in the court's records he was a minor footnote, a human observed, a test passed. It was not punishment exactly. It was education. The Seelie valued learning in a way humans could never understand. They maintained balance by ensuring that each creature, mortal or immortal, acted in accordance with natural law, their law. This law did not care about personal desire, kindness, or cruelty. It cared only about equilibrium. And humans, with their messy emotions and fleeting lifespans, were often dangerously imbalanced. The moral ambiguity of the Seelie Court becomes even clearer when their interactions with the Unseelie are considered. Humans think in terms of battle lines, heroes and villains, but the Seelie and Unseelie were more like opposing forces of energy. The Unseelie spread chaos, yes, but they too served balance in their own way. Their actions tested humans, forcing them to adapt, respect boundaries, and understand the weight of consequences. The Seelie, conversely, maintained order, but their enforcement was just as inexorable. To cross a Seelie unknowingly was as dangerous as wandering into the Unseelie, though the former's danger often appeared deceptively benign. Beneath the apparent glitter, the Seelie operated in ways that were profoundly alien to human understanding. Their etiquette, for instance, was rigid and unforgiving. Greetings, gifts, and gestures all had meaning far beyond surface politeness. Misstep in subtle social nuance could trigger consequences that ranged from mild inconvenience to permanent entrapment in the otherworld. Oaths were sacred. Breaking one was not just a moral failing, but a cosmic disturbance that reverberated through centuries. The court's sense of honor was absolute, though it often manifested in forms humans would struggle to recognize. To them, a mortal could be a lesson, a pawn, or even a reflection of the natural world's imbalance. The dangers associated with the Seelie were not always violent. Often they were psychological, emotional, and subtle. Humans reported time distortions, sudden feelings of vertigo or nostalgia, and visions of impossible landscapes. The fey gifts, often offered spontaneously, were double-edged. A blessing of creativity could come with an obsession that consumed the mortal's waking hours. A boon of beauty could twist perception, drawing envy or danger from others. The Seelie's interventions were never random. Every action served a purpose, a test, or an assertion of balance. Even in the modern world, their influence persists, though often distorted. In books, films, and games, glimpses of the court appear. Radiant elves, forest guardians, magical beings of light who guide and judge. But popular culture seldom captures the full spectrum of their nature. The strict laws, the moral ambiguity, the ancient rituals, and the consequences of missteps. The Seelie are simplified for entertainment, yet the essence remains. Beauty intertwined with power, charm intertwined with danger, order intertwined with judgment. Some urban legends claim that remnants of the court's presence remain in secluded forests, old stone circles, and sacred hills. People report strange lights at dusk, echoes of music in abandoned fields, or inexplicable visions of fleeting figures. Many dismiss these as folklore, imagination, or coincidence. But to those who believe, these are not coincidences. They are signs that the court is still active, watching, maintaining its balance in ways humans can barely perceive. Understanding the Seelie requires respect and fear, not worship or casual curiosity. One must never attempt to interact lightly, never assume kindness equates to safety. Learning the rules, to leave offerings, to honor oaths, to move with awareness and humility, is essential. Even then, engagement is risky. The court values discretion, attentiveness, and a deep awareness of the natural and supernatural world. Every action in their realm is significant, and every encounter carries potential consequences. The modern echo of the Seelie Court is seen not only in fantasy fiction but also in human psychology and culture. Their archetypes remind us that beauty and danger coexist, that power and responsibility are inseparable, and that the natural world itself demands respect. The Seelie challenge humans to recognize balance, both internally and externally, and to acknowledge that even the most radiant entities may operate on moral systems beyond our understanding. Those who have crossed their paths, in myth, story, or whispered legend, often emerge with altered perceptions. They perceive light differently, understand time with new elasticity, and feel the gravity of every choice in ways previously unimaginable. Even when separated from the mortal world, these experiences linger, shaping human creativity, morality, and cultural memory. The Seelie are not merely fairies. They are custodians of consequence, arbiters of harmony, and reminders that existence is rarely simple. To honor the Seelie, one must observe the land, respect the hidden, and recognize the value of unseen laws. Offerings, careful speech, and understanding of natural rhythms are not superstition but acknowledgement of a system older than humanity. Every whisper of wind, rustle of leaves, or flicker of light could be a subtle communication. A misstep could invite a lesson, a boon, or a warning. The court's presence is pervasive, woven into the landscape and our perception of it, yet hidden, always observing, always calculating. By understanding these rules, humans can navigate the court's influence safely, gaining insight, blessings, and rare glimpses of their radiant world, while avoiding punishment or entanglement in matters beyond mortal control. The Seelie's true lessons remain timeless. Respect, balance, attentiveness, and humility in the face of forces far older and more powerful than oneself. Even now, in cities, forests, and forgotten fields, their legacy continues to resonate. Those attuned to the signs can sense the shimmer of wings in twilight, hear faint music in windless nights, and glimpse fleeting silhouettes where shadows meet light. The court remains a living myth, a narrative both cautionary and inspiring, reminding humanity that the unseen shapes the seen, that beauty and power coexist, and that the world still holds mysteries beyond comprehension. Even in today's world, the Seelie Court leaves subtle fingerprints on human imagination. In fantasy novels, they appear as radiant elves or guardians of enchanted forests. In video games, they guide the player with riddles and gifts, sometimes benevolent, sometimes deadly. Movies depict them dancing in moonlit glades, whispering secrets of magic. Yet every depiction, however accurate or fanciful, only scratches the surface of the court's true complexity. The Seelie are not simply good or heroic. They are custodians of balance, arbiters of consequence, and masters of a moral system humans rarely comprehend. The modern echo of their influence lies in the stories we tell, the art we create, and the intuition that whispers in our subconscious. The world is alive with forces we cannot see. The subtle power of the court often shows itself in the unexpected. A sudden breeze in a silent forest, the soft glow of light reflecting off dew, or a fleeting shimmer at the edge of vision. These may seem insignificant, but to those attuned, they are signs of the court's awareness. Writers, artists, and dreamers have long sensed it. Some attribute their flashes of inspiration to the muses of old, but the Seelie Court moves just as subtly, planting ideas, nudging paths, rewarding observation, and teaching patience. To encounter them today is to confront the same awe and trepidation as mortals centuries ago, tempered by the understanding that the court's nature has not changed, only humanity's perception of it. To truly respect and fear the Seelie, one must study the rules etched into their lore. Never speak frivolously in the presence of the unseen. Never promise lightly. Never take food without intention. Never join a dance without understanding its consequences. Offerings are not superstition, they are acknowledgement of a system older than humanity. A simple gift of flowers, water, or a song can honor their law, while missteps risk unseen punishment. These interactions are lessons designed to teach attentiveness and humility. Even a minor infraction might unravel days, months, or even lifetimes of human expectation. The Seelie do not act out of malice, but their morality is not human. It is precise, impartial, and inexorable. One story tells of a traveling scholar who lingered too long near an ancient stone circle said to be favored by the court. He ignored local warnings, thinking them superstition. As he read his books aloud one night, faint whispers surrounded him, repeating his words in layered harmonies. When he awoke, he found the texts rearranged, ink shimmering like moonlight, revealing meanings he had never understood. To others it seemed miraculous. To him it was a reminder: the Seelie observe. They intervene. And they correct imbalance in ways humans cannot anticipate. Even in our cities, hidden pockets of magic persist. Parks, abandoned gardens, and remnants of ancient forests sometimes carry traces of the court's attention. Children report fleeting lights, animals behave oddly, or melodies emerge in quiet, empty streets. For the uninitiated, these are coincidences. For those attuned, they are reminders that the unseen persists, that beauty and consequence coexist, and that balance is maintained quietly, invisibly, yet unyieldingly. Yet the court's most profound lessons are not learned by observation alone. They are learned through reflection, humility, and engagement with the natural world. A person who honors the seasons, protects a wild grove, or acknowledges the presence of life unseen may find subtle favor. A person who disregards law, takes without giving, or acts with cruelty will eventually encounter lessons that cannot be ignored. In the Seelie Court, even mercy is conditional, tied to the rhythms of the universe. Their gifts are rarely simple, their lessons rarely immediate, and their motives rarely comprehensible. The duality of their influence, mirrored in the contrast with the Unseelie, is essential. The Seelie teach balance through order, the Unseelie through challenge. Humans misread these forces as good and evil, heroes and villains, but in truth, both are vital to the ecosystem of life, morality, and consequence. The court reminds us that beauty is not benign, kindness is not unconditional, and every interaction carries weight beyond immediate understanding. It is a lesson both humbling and empowering, The world is not ours to command but ours to honor. Stories from the modern era continue this legacy. Urban legends speak of individuals who enter forests or sacred sites and emerge changed, gifted with insight, creativity, or rare knowledge. Artists report moments of inspiration that feel too deliberate to be coincidence. Writers describe characters and stories that seem dictated by some unseen hand. Even those who dismiss the supernatural cannot entirely deny the pattern. The court persists. Their laws persist. Their influence endures. Humanity may have forgotten the full extent of the Seelie's power, but the echoes remain, subtle, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying. For those seeking direct guidance from the lore, the first step is always respect. Observe the natural world. Learn its rhythms. Understand that silence, stillness, and attention are forms of communication. Offer what you can without expectation. Speak when necessary and always with honesty. Never presume to dominate or command. And above all, acknowledge that you are in the presence of forces older, wiser, and far more patient than any human mind can comprehend. The Seelie Court teaches through these interactions. It is an education in ethics beyond human ethics, morality beyond conventional notions, and aesthetics intertwined with consequence. To study the court is to study the universe itself, filtered through the prism of beauty, order, and law. And the lessons are not trivial. The smallest act of curiosity, carelessness, or misunderstanding can produce results that last lifetimes, shaping not only the individual but the environment around them. As we reflect on these truths, we see that the Seelie Court is not merely a myth. It is a living narrative, a framework of understanding for those who choose to notice, to respect, and to act with intention. They remind us that life is layered with unseen forces, that choices resonate far beyond immediate perception, and that the universe often rewards subtlety, humility, and awareness more than power, ambition, or brute action. So, as the moon rises over forests, hills, and hidden glades, consider the possibility that something watches. Something radiant, ancient, and incomprehensibly beautiful. Something that measures, judges, and educates with quiet precision. The Seelie Court remains, shimmering at the edge of our perception, a reminder that wonder is not always safe, that beauty can be demanding, and that the unseen holds rules older than memory itself. And perhaps, in that quiet, luminous presence, there is a question we all must answer. Will we walk with care, humility, and awareness? Or will we stumble, unaware of the intricate balance around us? The answer may come silently, carried on the wind, whispered among leaves, or glimpsed as a shimmer of gold across the twilight. For those who notice, it is a gift. For those who ignore, a lesson. And for the brave, the curious, and the respectful, it is a world of wonder waiting to be discovered, one that exists far beyond glittering wings and storybook tales. If you believe in the unseen, subscribe to Fairy Mystery, where every story hides a secret waiting to be found. Where the light is more than beauty, the rules are older than law, and the echoes of the Seelie Court remind us that magic, consequence, and wonder still breathe in the spaces between worlds.